Hi everybody, this is day 1445. 1445 days since Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss, and we don't have his body, which that means he was murdered. That means he's another Vanessa Guillen case. It's as simple as that because he has been officially determined to be deceased by the United States government on April 24th, 2024. Something we knew from the very beginning. And we have been always right. And because of the overwhelming amount of evidence that we provided to the Board of Inquiry, because there's a lot of gray area with that, because there's been multiple Board of Inquiries, which means we fought to be there. They denied us that, but they did allow us, legally, they have to provide evidence to be reviewed. We have that evidence because of the overwhelming amount of evidence. They had no doubt. It was beyond the preponderance, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt that Richard had been murdered on Fort Bliss. Now, this proves that the CID report, which on a national level, the National Office CID confirmed, we have it confirmed, that the CID report is botched, is tampered with, and is therefore cannot be used for the only source to determine our son's status, the case, or anything else. Therefore, we are telling you, from 4 years, day in and day out, investigating our son's disappearance, the different designations, being the Vanessa Guillen First Absent Soldier, dealing with, I think we're on 5 or 6, my husband says 6, different casualty assistance officers, getting emails and mail and sending and all of the communications that we have had that only we have, that Bob Moore of El Paso Matters did such a disservice to Fort Bliss, to our nation, to El Paso, to Juarez, Mexico, because anything that happens in El Paso affects Mexico, Juarez, Mexico. That is borderland. That is absolutely borderland. And Juarez suffers more than El Paso when this criminal activity happens, okay? Because it's like if El Paso, if Fort Bliss sneezes, then Juarez gets the flu. Gets pneumonia. It's just, and because I was born at White Sands Missile Range, my dad worked on White Sands Missile Range. My dad was ADA. My dad was, and my mother was part of the American German club there. Uh, because there's so many Germans in that area because of the rocketeering, because of the missiles that they brought over after World War II, all these German officers. That's where Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, why she even met her husband, Alexander Hoffman, right? Because he was there, probably an engineer, probably a rocketeer engineer officer. Um, and she's absolutely connected to our son's case because she targeted our son's case. And of course, make sure that everybody can hear me. Yes. So, why? Because she shares a residence with Danae Katzen, who also, Danae contacted us right when we arrived in El Paso in 2020. In September of 2020, Danae Katzen contacted us to mislead us, to bring us over to KTSM, to tamper with the investigation, to mislead us in the investigation, and also do a disservice to El Paso. And she has connections with David Candelara of KTSM. She's married to Jonathan Ambrose, right? So it's so clear that there is a connection with David Candelara of KTSM, right? There's no question about it. And that's where she brought us. We didn't know that, but that's where she brought us to interfere. And then it is, once you understand that, it's no wonder that David Candelara of KTSM has continued to tamper with our son's case, put out misinformation about our son's case by posting anything that Bob Moore, the great tamperer, the great user of unreliable sources like, Richard's platoon leader's mother, who's a confirmed convicted criminal, and it gets even worse from there, and had unauthorized access to the CID, right, their office on Fort Bliss, because she was family and also an illicit sexual relationship with CID agent Tavita Nusa, who then later lost his badge because of being reported by a whistleblower of interfering in our son's case by tampering with Richard's file, a file that had been there way before the Walmart mass shooting. This is really important because Richard was whistleblowing. He was whistleblowing, and we know he was whistleblowing, and we have discovered more and more and more evidence of him whistleblowing. It's not just Belen Rocha saying Richard was reporting him multiple times to the CPS, Child Protective Services, and providing illicit evidence of the allegations. And no, we have even more. And the IG were all over the barracks because of Halliday, but we even have more. And Richard was reporting criminal trafficking. And every day, more and more information is coming out. I don't want to call it new information because it's been sitting there, right? It's been sitting there. It's been there, and you have to go through it. And then, of course, we do have the people coming forward to point it out, to come forward and tell us what happened in 2020 with the murder, the capital murder. And I want to even extend it. It was a premeditated murder. So this is a premeditated capital murder case. And Richard was removed from his bed. We have witnesses for that. Forced removal from his bed. He was murdered on Fort Bliss. And, what do you do with the body? You have to try to get it off of Fort Bliss because there's so many cameras everywhere. There's so many law enforcement and security measures on Fort Bliss. You have to try to get it off. That's what they did with Vanessa Guillen's body, right? They couldn't leave it on Fort Bliss. There's too many cameras, too much law enforcement, too much security on Fort Hood. They had to get her body off of the base, off of the installation. Same thing with Richard. That's what they did. They had to try to destroy the evidence, which means they tried to destroy his remains, which is a crime in itself to disrespect the remains of a human being, right? That is a crime in itself. It's disgusting. It's a disgrace. So this is this is what we have been investigating, our own son's murder, and the way it has been reported has been a disgrace, and Bob Moore is absolutely discredited on this because he used Leilani Hart. And when did he use Leilani Hart? After a witness whistleblower reported her for tampering with Richard's case. I think that's very, very important, and reported to Vita Nusa. And so the Bob Moore taking on just an unreliable and everything, unreliable convicted criminal, just up to no good. Leilani Hart, the mother of Richard's platoon leader, the prime suspect for the murder, the premeditated murder in Richard's case. For Bob Moore to take such a person, for Bob Moore to take Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, who, connected by shared residence with Danae Katzen, who's connected to family connections with Belen Rocha. It's just, if you know anything about this case, you're like, oh my gosh, what part does Bob Moore play in all this? Is he just a discredited journalist, or did he play even more of a part? This is why there is an ongoing investigation. He's being investigated. State and federal investigations are going on. We have that confirmed. So anything that he says, he might have some money behind him because, he's supported by El Paso Community Foundation. And they're supporting him. So he might have some money behind to get Google to put forth his very fabricated, false story on Richard that we, put out a cease and desist for that story because it interferes with our son's case so much. And think about this, Bob Moore was colluding with Bill Hicks, who, it's very important because Bill Hicks, anytime you're colluding with the district attorney's office, you're tampering with the criminal justice system, okay? If you are messing with the district attorney's office, you are tampering with the criminal justice system. And for Bob Moore to be colluding with Bill Hicks and Justin Underwood to petition to make life so horrible, to take down Yvonne Rosales, a duly elected district attorney. Okay, it was a shock election. They weren't expecting her to get it. They were expecting Mr. Montoya to get it, but he didn't. It was Yvonne Rosales. She got it, and she then began doing her job of identifying crime and prosecuting crime, documenting it, prosecuting it, and criminals don't like that. And so Bob Moore and Bill Hicks and Justin Underwood colluded. How do I know that? Because they were doing that on Facebook, y'all. They were doing that on Facebook to bring down a duly elected district attorney. And how do we know even more? Because we requested for open records, and we have received open records, and it hasn't been easy. There's some, we believe, retaliation against giving us open records because they know that we're going to read them. And if you read them, you discover that there was absolutely a huge effort to take down Yvonne Rosales. And then so she resigned in duress. Okay? Now, God has an amazing way of always getting justice, right? Because Bill Hicks then failed to be installed properly. He failed to be installed properly. He didn't do what was necessary to be installed legally as a district attorney. That's why he's a usurper right now. He's a usurper because he was never installed properly as the 34th Judicial District Attorney. And therefore, because Yvonne Rosales, and we have proof of this, had to resign in duress, even her resignation letter proves that it was in duress. She then, under the Texas Constitution, is the legal district attorney. She needs to pull on her boots and put on her full armor of God and go and assume her rightful place as district attorney. Otherwise, what's going to happen? She only has a short period of time to do this. And then she's going to have to go down in history as she is right now. Which to me would just be like, no way, no way. I'm going to go and assume my rightful position that so many El Pasoans elected me to hold. If she is a duly elected district attorney, and she is, she needs to do what the people elected her to do, and that is to identify crime, document the crime, and prosecute the crime, and give El Pasoans a working criminal justice system. Right now it's broken. The cogs aren't going. That's why you see all these little plea deals for the most horrendous crimes, and people feeling like they had, in their case, a miscarriage of justice. And in Richard's case, it depends partly on having a working criminal justice system in El Paso, a district attorney that will do their job. And Bill Hicks is unable, and he's illegal, and he's a usurper. He's a usurper. That's the best way to put it, as a district attorney. So who else is interfering in elections? Because that's what that is. That's an interference in elections. That is dismissing what the people of El Paso, who they want as their district attorney, right? That is tampering with candidates and tampering with the election, interfering with the election. And who else has been caught doing that now? And and that is Joe Spencer. Well, who is Joe Spencer? Joe Spencer is the attorney, the lead attorney in the Walmart mass shooting case for Patrick Wood Crucius. Okay? Now, he is bullying and intimidating I didn't say that. That's what Amanda Enrique said, right? She said that Joe Spencer, she felt intimidated, so intimidated and so bullied that before even proceeding to have a meeting with Joe Spencer, she knew she had to record the meeting. So she prepared to record the meeting because she did not want to be swayed by the bullying and the intimidation. And what was she being bullied and intimidated to do? They wanted to cut her off as a candidate for the 34th Judicial District Attorney's Office. She was cut off. Now, what gives Joe Spencer the right to intimidate and bully candidates, individuals that want to be a candidate, who are qualified to be a candidate for the district attorney's office? Okay? That is like so bad. That is so unethical. And not only that, to interfere with elections in order when you have this high profile case, the Walmart mass shooting, that nothing has been done in it. The 5-year mark is coming up. And, and he's intimidating and bullying to what? Why is he so concerned with who's in the DA's office, right? Is it to interfere with a mass shooting case? Is it to interfere with Richard Halliday's case? Because those two are totally connected. Totally. So Joe Spencer, he really seems to be up to no good. He seems to be up to no good. So just there's so many that seem to be up to no good in Richard's case. And the new information coming out about Nadal Baim, the FBI agent that on October 26, 2020, when we were there, when we were in El Paso, walked next door, really walked next door to the Dollar General and saw the flyers of Richard on the door and on the freezer door, the ice door, and went in and told the cashier to take down the flyers. And she was like, "Why? Has he been found?" And he said, "Yes, the FBI has found him." Now, let's explain this. When an FBI agent that says, "I'm an FBI agent," tells you to take down the flyers, what he is saying is the investigation is over. He was ending the investigation for anyone that was in that or came near that Dollar General. He was interfering with Richard's case. And he was saying the search is over. By telling her to take down the flyers, he's telling her the search is over. Now, that only means one thing, that they found him. And he tells her they found him. Who are they? The FBI. Is there any corroborating evidence? Yes. By the agent there in Juarez for the Department of State, Agent Macmillan, that corroborated that the FBI were indeed looking for Richard in Juarez, Mexico. And he proceeded to tell us the locations where they were looking, and then something happened. He got very nervous and he cut it off short. Now, we know from reports from brave individuals that have come forward that Richard was reporting crimes to authorities. And they were nervous. We know that Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz was shaking so hard. Matter of fact, he was caught, and Team Find Richard Halliday had a conversation with him there at one of the rallies, one of the very first rallies. And he was like, oh, I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know, that he was even on the deserter list. I didn't know. And Team Find Richard Halliday looked at him and said, you are an effing liar. Are you telling me that you, Command Sergeant Major, are you telling me that you did not know that Richard was missing and that he had been determined to be AWOL and then deserter and the family was not contacted at all? Is that what you're telling me? You have got to be kidding me. We are a military family. We have decades of service in the Army, all kinds of ranks. And Team Find Richard Halliday wasn't me, but I'm glad it was said you're an effing liar right to his face. Right to his face. And there's no wonder that he was shaken. He was shaken before and he was shaken even worse after. Because that was cover-up. That was misinformation to the people that love Richard the most. And that Command Sergeant Major, Shaky Jake Jakovitz, associates with Amber Chase, who posted and reaffirmed that she wants to F the soul out of Richard, film it, and send it to us. This Command Sergeant Major, Shaky Jake Jerry, associates with SFC Nick Brownbell Nuffzinger, who is the 1AD PR team member, right? And you know what they all have in common? I mean, and this, okay, so this group, this criminal group, that Bob Moore's criminal group, okay? These are people that Bob Moore depends on to get his fabricated fake stories that are attack stories, political attack stories. I don't know what his conflicts of interest are, but they must be many. Because this is Bob Moore's criminal group, a Command Sergeant Major, Richard's Command Sergeant Major, that says he doesn't know what the heck's going on with our son. And he gets called out, and he's shaking. And hangs out with Richard's first sergeant, who even refused to speak with the family. And by the way, Bob Moore refuses to speak with the family because he prefers to use confirmed convicted criminals. A confirmed convicted criminal like Leilani Hart to get his information from. He refuses to speak to the family of the officially declared murdered soldier on Fort Bliss. Yet he will hobnob with impersonators, he himself using fake, not all the time, but sometimes when he gets caught communicating with us, he'll, it is, on a Facebook impersonating site. This is, how is he going to explain that to the court? I refuse to respond to the family's 15 attempts with them providing evidence and warnings about false information, fabricated stories. I refuse to respond to them, yet I'll go and collude and harass and threaten with the impersonators and the prime suspects in the murder of the Fort Bliss soldier. And that's being done by the generous funding of El Paso Community Foundation. Now that's a disgrace. That's a disgust. He is a discredit and a disgrace and a disgust. He's DDD. He's a DDD. A discredit, a disgrace, a disgust to journalism. So, and then you have the attorney of the Walmart case bullying and intimidating to tamper with the election of the district attorney's office. And it makes you wonder if he was also participating with the collusion to unseat Yvonne Rosales. Because he has that conductor's bully wand in his hand. He's an orchestrator. And his conflicts of interest are pretty interesting in a bad way. And they're holding El Pasoans in tyranny right now because the criminal justice system is broken. And you have this group, this criminal group from Richard's original response team, right? That's what they are, the original response team. Tavita Nusa, the CID agent, original response team. First Sergeant Ruggiero, original response team. Nick Brownbell, Nufzinger, original response team. Amber Chase, she's El Paso Independent School District, y'all. That vile and vulgar individual is in the El Paso Independent School District. And previously, mortuary affairs. And that she's, hobnobbing with Bill Hicks. See, she has a connection with Bill Hicks's office. Very close connection. And Bill Hicks, before he became a usurper, was representing Purchase Funeral Homes, who is the funeral homes that were in charge of the remains of the victims of the Walmart mass shooting. And, I hope not Richard's remains. Where's Richard's remains, right? If they found Richard's remains, like so many said, Nadal Baim, DOS, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, Jaime Corona, Department of Director of Emergency Services for Fort Bliss, Thomas Kane. And I can go on and on. Even Leilani Hart said Richard was a code red. She confesses. Remember when she was a convicted criminal, became the convicted criminal, the judge said she's not right. I mean, look, she prime suspect, but she'll confess Richard is code red. She was getting her mail at the adult sexual service business. And we know that she's connected to Danae through the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And and connected then to Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia and to Felix Valenzuela through 2905 Bliss Avenue. You see, we've been doing so much investigative work. There's no excuse for Bob Moore not to have reached out to us before writing that fabricated, fake hit job story trying to steal our son's death story and using his picture without our permission. That's our picture. That's not his picture. That's our son. We are our son's protectors. And he has to ask first. Ask first. So we have so much breaking news, but this is very, very important. Because the true story, the real story, has to come out. The real questions and the murder, the premeditated murder of Richard has to be answered. And when there are fabricated fake stories that mislead, then it delays the questions from being answered and for the crimes to be identified, documented, and prosecuted. That's why the justice system, the criminal justice system in El Paso is clearly broken. And it's only when we get the real reporting, real stories, ethical stories, that we can then identify the crimes, answer the questions, document it, and get real justice in the accountability of the perpetrators of these murder cases. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the likes of Bill Hicks, the likes of Bob Moore, the likes of Joe Spencer have obstructed the criminal justice system. And I would say they've contaminated the criminal justice system to goo it up, to gum it up, so that it cannot operate. It operates in a very, that it cannot operate properly, and that the only way that it can operate is in a very gooey, gummy way of all these little plea deals and no real investigative prosecution to hear the trials, to hear what happened, to really have a verdict by juries. It's like it's all done by like these gooey plea deals because it's all contaminated by the likes of Bill Hicks and their very criminal actions, Bob Moore and his criminal actions, and Joe Spencer, his unethical and I would say criminal actions. To try to stop Amanda Enrique by bullying, and I guess he succeeded, by bullying and intimidation is so criminal to our way of life in our system. The fact that on October 26, 2020, was it October? Yeah, yes, October 26, 2020. Nadal Baim walks into the Dollar General store right next to where he works. Where does he work? You know, he's saying I'm an FBI agent and the FBI found Richard and he's dead in Juarez, Mexico. And where does he work? He works there at Western Frontier Trading. Western Frontier Trading, right next to Blue Party Hall. Blue Party Hall. And what does he do there at Western Frontier Trading? Don't be deceived. They might have these websites. You know, I went to the website because when he went in to that Dollar General, we immediately went there. And we received, by the grace of God and by the courage of the cashier, the CCTV footage and her video testimony. And we turned that in right away to the FBI. Right? Who's the FBI? The FBI Supervisory Director, Jesus Eddie Nieto Jr. Now, that should have alerted Bob Moore. Oh my gosh. This man, even if the narrative, the false narrative, the fake narrative, the fabricated narrative was true, which it's not, Bob Moore should, and media should, have reported that a man claiming to be FBI, an FBI agent, said that the missing soldier has been found and is dead in Juarez, Mexico. That should have been headlines. Yeah, it makes you speechless. Makes me speechless. But what were we told? That this is he's just some guy. So he's just some crazy guy watching your Facebook. Okay. He's not some crazy guy. He is the father-in-law of Bradford, Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ATCOM. This was months later. We had to investigate ourselves. You see, this is where Bob Moore doesn't understand. We have done the investigation. Sean Bernabe, the commanding officer of Fort Bliss, with Shaky Jake Command Sergeant Major, the effing liar. Sorry, I don't mean to. I'm just saying it was so bad what he was saying that Team Fine Richard Halliday called him out. Called him out. But that Command Sergeant Major and that commanding officer and that SJA and Marlon Soto, dirty agent for CID, Marlon Soto, called a VTC meeting we went to Eustis for this VTC meeting on who was the FBI man that walked into the Dollar General store. We had to travel to Eustis. We had to go into a special room to have this secured VTC meeting. And we're told he's just some guy watching our live stream. American taxpayers had to pay for that. They had to pay for that continuous misinformation, to say it politely. Did we believe them? No way. No way. And we told them so. We knew that they were hiding information, keeping information from us, important information from us. And by the grace of God, no one's, I'm going to save it for the book. But for the grace of God, we discovered for ourselves who the individual was that was the FBI agent that walked into the Dollar General and said the FBI had found Richard dead in Juarez, Mexico, to the cashier and tried to silence her and told her to take down the flyers. The search is over. Now, that's a very important event and incident, whatever you want to call it, in this whole case, in this whole investigation. There's more important than this, but this is one of the important ones. And what's important about it is that the commanding officer at the time, a major general, who got a 3rd star for this, not only conducting a task force find Richard Halliday official meeting with 15 plus agencies, including the CID Provost Marshal, right? The Provost Marshal, Major General Donna Martin, out of uniform and without an op ord. Not only did Sean Bernabe do that, but Sean Bernabe called for a VTC meeting about Nadal Baim and would not reveal who he was, who his connections were, and what he did. And how did he know what he knew? Because Nadal Baim is the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado of the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM. Richard is 32nd ADCOM. But Bradford Bugado works with the wife of the FBI director, Jesus Nieto Jr., who we presented all of the stuff to. And not only that, he works for Western Frontier Trading, who bids to provide munitions and more to government agencies like the El Paso Police Department. Now, don't tell me that Sean Bernabe did not know who Nadal Baim was and that he has the ability to have access to information to the FBI as an agent of the FBI, to G3 information through his son-in-law, just like Leilani Hart had access and bragged about it to the CID office there on Fort Bliss because she had family there. She had family there that she was having an illicit sexual relations with. And she was given unauthorized access. Why? Because she was saying it. Just like the FBI affidavit that was accepted. We have the FBI case number. Why? Because she likes to brag. She likes to prove what she can do. And she had access to Richard's file, unauthorized access. So this convicted criminal, confirmed convicted criminal, had access to Richard's file. And we all know that Richard's file was big because it was before the Walmart mass shooting. And we all know that Richard's platoon leader was Leilani Hart's son, Dallas Hart, who also is associated with Bob Moore in the harassment, the threats, the intimidation, the interference with Richard's family, with Richard's investigation, with Richard's case, with Richard's memory. So Dallas Hart is Leilani Hart's son, with the affidavit confessing that her family's engaged in incest, sexual assault of a 7-year-old in her master bedroom. And this is, and the child pornography, the purchasing weapons illegally, her immigration status in question. And so we have this information. Bob Moore should come to us for this information. We provided our contact information. He has not responded. And so he is discredited, he's a disgust, and he is disgraced. And Leilani Hart is a prime suspect in the murder of Richard and tampered with Richard's file that she had unauthorized access to tamper with. And Sean Bernabe and Major General James Eisenhower did not let us know this. Yeah, it's pretty big. It's pretty bad. And these ammunition bids and all that, you question, okay, so where are they getting the ammunition? I know about these brown tip bullets because they're not registered. Are they just, if they are willing to tamper with elections, tamper with candidates for district attorney, if they are willing to use unreliable sources and totally become a discredited, disgraced, disgusting journalist, are they willing to do much worse? It seems they're willing to do much worse. So, thank you, Anicia, for coming on. Thank you so much, Danielle. Danielle says it definitely delays investigation and justice with false witnesses. There was never a proper investigation other than your investigation, in my opinion. Thank you. And that's how we feel. And that's why Bob Moore is a discredited, disgraced, and disgusting journalist for putting out such a false narrative without even responding to our many attempts. And why is it important? Because because he's so supported, right? The other media depend on him for stories, and they just echo. And those stories, and we know it. We know how important it is. Look at the whole thing with Biden. Everybody knows, by their own senses, their own eyes, right? And yet they want to pull this story of the emperor without clothes, until someone finally says, "Hey, look, he doesn't have any clothes on." But everybody's like, oh, it's so nice. Oh, it's so beautiful. I don't want to be the one to say it, right? And this is Bob Moore. His job in this whole case has been to mislead people into thinking that the emperor has no clothes. That Joe Biden is fit to be president. No, Joe Biden is not fit to be president. And Richard absolutely was murdered. All the forensic evidence, everything. Why would Sean Bernabe have to discredit himself, disgrace himself, to be a disgusting general, to withhold very important information about Nadal Baim, and that Nadal Baim is a bidder for munitions? And people don't know this, but he has a criminal record. He has a criminal record that, for terroristic activity. How in the world does his son-in-law even have his high security clearance? You see, we're a military family. We understand El Paso. And so their attempt to manipulate us, absolutely there's been a delay because of us going, what's going on? What's going on? This is not right. And having to check and investigate and check and investigate. But if you want the news for El Paso, you should come here. Because who is telling El Pasoans that they have a usurper for DA, that they have an illegal, and we got these open records and they're so redacted. The whole thing is redacted, right? The whole thing is redacted on Mario Raskin Ortiz. And he's so illegal, y'all. And what does that mean? That means that the person that put him there, Veronica Escobar, she was the judge at the time. She, look, she does not want this to get out. She wants everyone to think the emperor has no clothes. That Rascon is qualified and is a legal chief medical examiner for El Paso. And yet, he dared not to touch Scalia. Scalia was sent to him. He dared not to touch him. He was warned not to touch him. Because he is not a qualified, properly installed chief medical examiner. I don't know what Governor Abbott is doing right now. I mean, things must be so contaminated. That people just can't even respond and act and straighten this mess out. And you know who's suffering? Our volunteer sons and daughters. That's who's suffering. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on. And we have so much information. But do not, I put it in the title because I didn't want anyone to forget to really ponder this, to really think about this, to really investigate this for yourself. But Joe Spencer is part of this too. And he's up to no good. And he's interfering with candidates and elections. What else is he interfering with? And he is working with Felix Valenzuela, who is connected to Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia and Danae Katzen and, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which means Lilani Hart. And he's known to give advice to the members, to Lilani Hart. And he's, just, and he's right there with Joe Spencer. So really do your research with Joe Spencer, because we feel like he has been given the conductor's bully wand, the wand of intimidation, the wand of, while he's orchestrating misinformation, orchestrating delay, orchestrating retaliation, orchestrating the interference in major cases. So thank you, everyone. Please share, please like, and please comment. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing.